then you won't say kiss me again. Tell me what's the reason I'm not pleasing you. If you must keep me in doubt, how will I know what to do? You can turn me about, I'll be what you want me to. Though I've tried, yes I've tried, still you're never satisfied. Tell me what's the reason I'm not pleasing you.
So, focus right now, for the next few minutes at least, until I get bored. Well, maybe even the next hour and a half, because Sherry Trupat said my name twice, and that was very nice. Correctly, of course.
There's a little Dinah doubleheader there for the Grohalskis out of Bay City, Michigan, that whole area. We've known that family for a long, long time.
Oh, yeah.
There's some funny stuff going on with them, too.
What were you saying about Scrubby?
Oh, and that last part of the song, when after we got done with the last vocal there, and you hear him, he's kind of sing along with the horn melody. Da, 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 whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Then in the studio, I says, what was that? He goes, I was crooning. I says, crooning.
I remember that.
That was crooning, that one little note. But you can listen closely in a lot of his tunes. He does that.
He does that.
You'll hear that, but you got to listen for it.
You got to listen for it, yeah. Oh,
he
gosh.
does a lot of that
he
stuff.
was a character in the studio, I'll tell you that. And I'm so glad I experienced that, I'll tell you that much.
Well, for the musicians out there, you should have tried to sing harmony to that.
Oh, yeah.
Scrubby had his own way of singing, his own metering.
Right.
And there's times when I was singing harmonies, this album in particular, I had to go and sing harmonies to him, like on Rasvache, and, or most of the songs I think I sing harmony to him on this.
How did you do that?
Sometimes line by line, just to match his cadence, because it was bizarre. It doesn't sound it when you're just listening to it because it was so natural for him.
Right, yeah.
But when you got to match that,
yeah,
and Dave Zahofsky producing, he was a stickler on that. I mean, you had to match it like two coats of paint. Mm-hmm. And there was times, I don't remember what song it was, I was working on a harmony in there. We were doing it line by line. I would sing the line, and Gary would say, yeah, you're close, but not quite. And play it for me again, just his voice again. And, okay, let's do it. And there was times we dropped the music, and I just sang with Scrubby's voice.
Right, yeah.
To try to get it. Oh, yeah. I mean, so there were some times that he just had a certain feel for the music. Mm-hmm. And that's what made him Scrubby, though.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's for sure.
But then I'd sing harmony to him, and it's like, I'm not Scrubby.
How do you do that?
Yeah, and it was difficult at times, we got it done.
Did he ever sing his own harmony?
He did, but he preferred not to.
Oh, okay. I never knew that,
and that's why in the early days, Larry always sang the harmony to him.
Oh, that's
later
right.
years, I sang the harmony. Yeah, he could, but he preferred not to for some reason.
Oh, okay.
He just thought it sounded better with somebody else that sang with him regularly on the gigs.
Oh, okay. All right.
But yeah.
All right, never knew that. Well, good evening to Karen and Larry Trojak. Good evening to you guys. Greg.
Yeah, there he is. He's got some knowledge of trying to sing harmony to Scrubby.
Yeah. Greg Schweidak. Hello there, Schweity. Also, good evening to our friends Sandy and Matt Lewandowski tuned in. Good evening to you guys. Polka Mike. Good evening. And Tommy Belanda joining us here. Good evening to you, Tommy.
The New Generation Band, who will be appearing at the IPA Festival this year.
Yes. Yeah. Good evening to you. All the Belandas. Good evening.
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
Is that it? That's all you were going to say?
Well, do you want me to say more? I can.
Yeah, keep
I mean, I can go on and on. I'll keep talking, did you say? All right, I will do that. Okay, so they said thank you. Let me run down the chat room then, as long as I have a moment before I have to step away for a second. Ray and Donna Skorka and Barb Bukowski, all the Bukowskis tuned in. Big Stosh, oh, my favorite little shortstop joining us. Mama Chris Tansky and Greg Schweidak, drummer boy Bobby and Judy Sendra. Jake Fortin here still with us. Indiana Nana and Indiana Dave and Kiki. Jimmy Chainsaw Kuharski. Joe Dembeck and Elaine. John Nalavenko, good evening to you, John.
Oh, let me stop you there for 1 second. Congratulations to Elaine on her retirement.
Oh,
She
yes.
retired recently.
Oh, good evening. Oh, yeah. Good evening. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. Retirement's not a bad thing. So, welcome.
Until we all run out of money, then it's going to get real
Well, then
bad.
we'll talk. Well, fixed income. Little John Nalavenko, Johnny Barron, Ken in Green Bay, Les and Alice Kapuscinski, Loretta and Tina Curtis, Polka Mike, Royce and Linda Plata, Rick and Marla.
Oh, we got one coming up for them.
Yep, they're tuned in. Ears right, though. I'm
Are
sure.
they camping this weekend?
No, they're going to Pulaski. That must be this weekend, Pulaski, right? Must be, because I asked them if
Yeah,
they were
that's right,
camping.
it
So,
is.
yeah. Yep, they're getting ready for that.
Well, they're probably going in their camper. No?
No,
they're not.
Doesn't sound that way.
Okay.
No, but have a great time, guys. Rick and Marla Kunke, Rick Anton, Tia and Jen, and Uncle Tony and Helen Vinyarsh. Also, BB listening in, KK, Karen Jakubski and Jeff, Simon, Zach, and Liz also listening in. And I think someone came in on that I wanted to say hi to, and they disappeared. All right. Andy Kozlowski from L.A. just joined us, too.
Hey,
so
Andy.
good evening to you, Andy. All right, I think I'm caught up for just a moment.
All right. Let's, before they get to Pulaski, they're probably driving on their way. Let's do one for Rice and Linda. There she is. Delta Dawn, the singing flight attendant. Special for Rice and Linda. This is called Pass It On. Dawn Suhan for you.
Each one of us here has a love for this music, but we just ignore modern trends. So let us stop to think, now how did we get here? Oh, let's all think to way back when. It's because someone cared, and someone showed us, and someone took
for our good former friends from out there in Wisconsin, Royce and Linda Plata. They're not on their way to Pulaski.
It's next weekend.
And I just played the ad not that long ago.
Yeah, I know. You corrected yourself. You said it's not this weekend. So, yeah, our bad. But, yep, they enjoyed it. So, you guys are very, very welcome.
Yes.
Hey, good evening to Kenny Olwen here just joining us.
Now, here you go. Now
Kenny!
he's going to steal the crowd from us again in the chat room.
Oh, sure,
They're
Kenny.
not going to listen to a word we're saying. You're going to be talking to Kenny in the chat room.
Now you got to rain on my
All we need
parade.
is Lonky to show up, and it's all over. We might as well go watch TV.
Yeah.
On our nice new high-definition system.
I know. Yeah.
That's another episode.
Well, welcome, Kenny Olwen. Happy Gary. You guys really just do an awesome job. You crack us up. Crack everybody up, apparently.
Apparently,
right?
because that's all we heard for the last 4 weeks. These guys are terrific. Oh, yeah. I like the one that says you ought to give them their own show.
Who said that?
I don't know.
Oh.
You got to give these guys their own show.
Oh, yeah. Give them their own show.
Fantastic.
Yeah, beautiful.
They didn't actually say anything like that. Mark is making things up.
Here on the Polka Jammer Network.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, you know what? We decided it would be a good thing. We're going to give
Either that or his name was absolutely out of this world and he didn't even want to mention it.
Kenny Olwen's Great American Polkas, our Hot American Polkas.
From the Red Room, maybe?
From the Red Room. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got to paint the room red, though.
Yeah.
And have Gary Lonky as his guest. You know, his
Right.
guest, well, his assistant.
Yeah.
What do you saw? Sidekick.
Sidekick, yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so we're going to start them on the air this Sunday, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out right here on the Jammer. Kenny Olwen and Gary Lonky have their own show now on the Jammer.
See?
You're
There
going
you
to love
go.
it.
You're very welcome.
They're going to be terrific. See, we gave them their start here on TGI Friday. I can imagine what's going through Olwen's head right now.
Well, right now he just says you make me want to cry. And I'm not sure if that's good or bad.
That could go either way.
Hey, you know what? Those two have fun together, I got to tell you.
Yeah, they do.
Joe and Diane Yambor are joining us. Good evening to you guys.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us in the chat
Don't
room.
cry, Kenny. It's okay.
So, hey, it's Tears of Happiness. He now has his own show on Sunday nights.
Oh,
See,
that's
because of the
right.
listeners that I said, they went out of their way to voice their opinion that we need to give them their own show. So,
Oh, and here you go.
there you go. You ask and you shall receive. All right here on the Polka Jammer Network.
When the rooster crows at the break of dawn, look out your window, honey, while
We were back in 5 minutes or less.
I'm traveling on. But don't think twice, it's all right. Ain't no use to sit and wonder why, babe. It don't matter anyhow.
Nikki D. Sebastiano on that one. Don't think twice. Like I don't think very much. Don't think twice. It's all right. Let's do another one off of that same recording. There's my buddy Frankie Leishka on this one. I'm heading home. Here are the boys for you here on TGI Friday. Frankie Leishka on the vocal. I'm heading home off the Boys Stories CD. The boys for you here on TGI Friday. And it's nice to catch up with Frank in Ocean Beach.
Oh,
We're having a
yeah.
howling time over there.
Oh, we're
There's a
howling.
lot of laughing going on.
Was there?
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't there.
In fact, Gamolka come up and he said to me, he was sitting in the hallway there with Kevin Adams, and we were talking. He says, "Hey, let me ask you something." I said, "Yeah, what do you need?" "Are you drunk when you're on the air?"
No.
I says, "No, I'm just normally an idiot."
Here's some good news, not only for polka fans, but for all music lovers. A new recording will soon be released by the award-winning Lenny Gamolka and Chicago Push. This new and exciting, long-awaited CD is titled To the Moon and Back. Showcases the sweet sounds of Hall of Famer Lenny Gamolka and the award-winning Chicago Push on a total of 16 new songs, all mixed and mastered at Peppermint in Youngstown, Ohio. To the Moon and Back is sure to musically work its way into your heart and quickly onto your favorite polka playlist. Plus, making it extra special, Lenny is joined by the gracious and very talented combination of Didi O'Grodny and Ryan Joseph of Alan Jackson fame. Get ready to welcome into your library of all-time favorite CDs the soon-to-be-released To the Moon and Back with Lenny Gamolka and Chicago Push. A targeted release of late July is expected, and it will be available exclusively at chicagopush.com or off the stage wherever Lenny is performing. To the Moon and Back. Lenny Gamolka and Chicago Push, coming soon in late July.
2-minute ad for that, and he's asking me if I'm the one drinking while I'm in the air.
Hi, Hey everybody, this is Jimmy Sturr, and I'd like to tell you about a very special evening right here on the Polka Jammer Network. It's Saturday evening, July 30th, starting at 6 p.m. I'll be doing the Saturday Night Polka Party from 6 to 7. Then we'll be going live at 7 p.m. with the Jimmy Sturr Band from the Town Park in Cheektowaga, New York. We'll not only be featuring the band, but some very special guests, including from Canada, John
Break time.
Polka Hall of Famer Joe Michalek. Keith Straz will be our MC. I know it'll be a lot of fun. Make sure you make plans to listen Saturday, July 30th, here on the Polka Jammer Network, starting at 6 p.m. with the Saturday Night Polka Party, followed by yours truly in the orchestra, live from the Town Park in Cheektowaga, New York.
Hi, this is Larry Trojak, one of the co-founders of the Dynatones, inviting you to an afternoon of great polka music on Sunday, August 7th.
Thank you for watching the Tank Museum's YouTube channel, and don't forget to subscribe.
Welcome everybody to the Tank Museum, to the Tank Museum's YouTube channel, and to support them on Welcome everybody to the Tank Museum. My name is Bismarck and I host the Military Aviation's History channel on YouTube. Now I'm here to show you my top 5 tanks, but since I don't know much about these vehicles, I, as a German, came prepared and bought myself a cheat set. Now I base my choice mainly on the utility of tanks as a scout vehicle and using them in airborne operations. So let's get started. Right, we're standing in front of my first choice. This is the American M22 Locust. This is a light tank designed by Marmon and Harrington, and it was supposed to be air transportable. To do this, it was really a two-stage process. You would take off the turret, you would place this inside a C-54 Skymaster, and then you use these hooks here to strap the whole hull under the fuselage of the aircraft. Obviously, this means that this tank cannot be dropped into combat, but actually has to be placed back together wherever you brought it to. When this tank came out, even though it was kind of a revolutionary idea, it was already out of date. This was 1943 we're talking, and something like this was just not going to cut it any longer. So the Americans said, we don't want this, who wants it? The Brits said, yes, we'll have it. Let's give it a shot. Now the Brits had a plan. They were going to use the Locust and drop it into combat in their Hamilcar gliders. The Hamilcar glider was big enough to accommodate this tiny tank, and this provided the solution that the Americans had not. When it was dropped into combat, it was supposed to put the 37mm cannon and its coax machine gun to good use and make sure that the Germans keep their heads down. However, the combat record during the Rhine crossing, when these tanks were in fact used, was less than stellar. Transporting the Locust into combat was also somewhat difficult. This is a 7-ton tank, even though it's quite small, and it doesn't have that much armor, 23mm roughly. It was still 7 tons. And if the Hamilcar glider came to a sudden stop, well, it might just come out the front end of it. All of that said, the Locust represents a courageous effort of actually giving the boys in the field a tank to drop into combat with them. And that's why it deserves to be on my top 5 list. Now, if the Locust deserves to be on my list, so does the Tetrarch. This is the first British airborne tank, and here at the Tank Museum it is in fact in its natural environment, since it is exhibited inside a Hamilcar glider. Well, the fuselage is slightly wrecked, but you can see how much of a tight squeeze it actually is, and how much of a nightmare it is to transport a tank like this. However, the Tetrarch was used during combat, and during the Normandy landings it supported the paratroopers in northern France. For this role it was given a 2-pounder, this is a 40mm cannon, and a machine gun to, well, shoot at the Germans, I guess. In the Bovington Tank Museum here we have a Tetrarch with a 3-inch howitzer, however, so this is an experimental version and makes it all more exciting. One of the things that really impressed me with the Tetrarch is that, in fact, if you put it into a turn, the tracks bend as it goes along into the direction you wanted the tank to go. So this is a nice little feature on the tank, I guess. Now, one of the things we should point out is that even though this is a light tank, it still weighs 7 to 8 tons, which complicates the transport by glider somewhat. Once it gets into a fight, the crew of 3 is protected by 16mm of armor. Now, when the tank was designed in 1939, this was pretty cool. In 1944, being dropped into a combat zone in Normandy, where every bush camping German has access to a Panzerfaust, things suddenly look a lot different. Because the Tetrarch represents once again a valiant attempt of dropping a tank into combat, it once again deserves to be on my top 5 list. Let's go over to my next choice. This is the FV703, also known as the Ferret. And it inherits a position in the British tradition of the Scout car in the post-World War II period. It is following the concept of the Scout car pretty much to the letter. It is small, it is stealthy, it is speedy, and it can go anywhere at any time. And this really gives the army and the boys on the ground a vehicle that can do scouting in the hinterlands, on the front lines, and wherever you wish to do it. The thing that really impresses me about Ferret is its speed. It can go on road up to 100 kilometers an hour. That's, for you Imperials out there, 60 miles an hour. So this thing can do some serious speed. Right, let's turn to Ferret's weaponry. It has, of course, a rifle caliber machine gun, which is pretty good for close defense, but that's pretty much all it can do. However, the Brits gave this Scout car some serious firepower with the introduction of 2 Vigilant missile launchers on the side of the turret in the mid-1960s. And these missiles can knock out an MBT at a range of roughly 1,400 meters. So essentially it takes the concept of a Scout car and says, right, let's drive softly but carry a big gun. Now, while this introduction of the missile does open the Scout car's options, the introduction still has practical limits, because right now the Scout car is of course supposed to do a certain task, and that is scout, reconnoiter, and tell your own guys where the enemy is at. These missiles are a serious temptation for any kind of Ferret commander who sees a MBT just strolling along a field in front of him. Even though they can be launched with pretty much no flash and bang, you still have to wait roughly 12 seconds for an impact at maximum range. And in that time you could be spotted and under fire. And since they're wire guided, you can't really move until the missile hits. So it's a good idea, and it works in some situations, but it also has some serious flaws. Now, for all the practical limitations the Ferret has with these Vigilant missiles, I actually kind of like the idea of placing such a powerful weapon on such a small, unobtrusive vehicle. And that's why it's number 3 in my top 5 tanks. Next one up the list, it's the Daimler Armored Car. Now, I really like this vehicle, again, for multiple reasons. First of all, it looks great, then it's a scout vehicle, it can go fast, 90 kilometers an hour again, roughly 50 to 60 miles an hour, and it has some good firepower. It's a 2-pounder gun that could be adapted with a Little John adapter, and this gun can do some pretty good damage against soft armored targets, but also against some more armored vehicles. Now, what really makes this vehicle shine is the transmission. And it has a very fancy kind of setup. And in fact, the Brits here out-engineered the Germans and made it work. So what it has 5 speeds forward and 5 speeds backwards. That means that the driver, who's obviously facing forward, can go at full speed and, if need be, stop, and then the commander in the back, who has a little steering wheel, can go 5 speeds backwards at the same speed. And that is pretty damn cool for a little vehicle like this, in my opinion. And that's why it's on my top 5 list. And now we're at my number 1 choice, and this tank has quite a long name, so I hope you have your clipboard ready. This is the Panzerkampfwagen 2, Ausführung L Lux. It is a German light tank from the mid to late war period, and it is based, of course, on the Panzer II. This tank started production in September 1943. And it was supposed to be used mainly on the Eastern Front. This is, of course, the reason why the Germans opted for a track design for a scout vehicle. However, the strange choice they had is that they had overlapping road wheels, which were somewhat problematic when it comes to the mud. However, it is quite a nifty vehicle. It has a Maybach engine pumping out roughly 200 horsepower, and that allows it to go 60 kilometers an hour. This, for a tank its size and for the purposes that it was built for, is actually pretty good. Now, it houses a crew of 4 and is protected by 30 millimeters of armor. Now, what makes this tank so special to me is the gun. This is the Kampfwagenkanone 38, a 20 millimeter cannon. And this weapon is pretty much seen throughout the war on the German side. It derives out of the Kampfwagenkanone 30 and shares a family tree with the Flakkanone 30 and Flakkanone 38, which obviously were designed to shoot down aircraft, which is why this makes this gun so special for me. Also, one of the members of that family tree is in fact the Solothurn ST5, which the Germans redesignated as C-30. And that cannon, that 20 millimeter cannon, was one of the first 20 millimeter cannons that was actually mounted in an aircraft. During the Spanish Civil War, there was certain rivalry between Heinkel and Messerschmitt. Heinkel provided the Heinkel 112, and Messerschmitt, of course, the Bf 109, and they were competing against each other which company would give the frontline fighter for the Germans. And Heinkel decided to place the C-30 cannon in a Heinkel 112, send it off to Spain, and there it in fact insisted in the destruction of an armored train and a few armored cars. And before it would continue its service, actually it crashed and destroyed itself, and as such that experiment essentially failed. Now, because I like the look of this tank and because this gun is so ubiquitous in its service for the German armed forces, this is my top tank. That was my top 5. I hope you enjoyed them. Don't forget to subscribe to the Tank Museum's YouTube channel and to support them on Patreon. Also make sure to check out my channel, Military Aviation History, and to check out my Patreon. As
I'm the history guy, and I'm here in Bovington, England, where the world-famous Tank Museum has asked me to list my top 5 tanks. But of course, I'm the history guy, so I'm all about forgotten history. So what I'm going to be doing is searching this museum's extraordinary collection for 5 tales of forgotten history that deserve to be remembered. This is an odd-looking vehicle indeed. The bottom looks like a tank, but the top looks like sort of a bathtub. And you might even say it's not a tank at all. It doesn't have a turret, it doesn't have a gun. But what's most important in combat is getting the vehicles where you need them to be, and that's where the Beach Armored Recovery Vehicle, or BARV, comes into play. The idea of BARVs came from the granddaddy of amphibious invasions, the D-Day invasion in 1944, when 60 M4A2 Sherman tanks were modified as BARVs to help to clear the landing areas. You know, when you have amphibious invasion, you're going to get all sorts of stuff that's stuck in the way. There might be a tank broken down or knocked out. There might be landing craft or vehicles that are stuck. And what the BARV does is it's able to wade into the surf and move those out of the way using sheer brute force. So this could be used, for example, to push a landing craft onto shore or to push it out to sea. This could be used to push a disabled tank out of the way of a landing lane, or this could even be used to anchor boats. And so these are what allow you to get the vehicles in, because in an amphibious invasion, what's most important is to get as much stuff on shore as fast as possible. And those Sherman barbs were so effective that they continued using them. The British Army continued using them clear into the 1950s, well after they'd stopped using all other kinds of Shermans. But the problem was, it came a point where the Sherman simply didn't have enough oomph to push around a modern vehicle. And so they decided to create this, a barb that's built on a Mark III Centurion hull, and the 12 of these were produced in 1963. Barbs served aboard amphibious assault ships, HMS Fearless and HMS Intrepid. This particular vehicle served on both at different times. The engine was moved to the back of the superstructure for accessibility, and the exhaust vents moved to the top of the structure. The superstructure is only 25 millimeters thick, which is, well, not very much, given that the Barb would be one of the first vehicles into the combat zone and would be expected to operate under fire. For defense, the best way to operate was to go as deep as possible, using the water for cover. A Centurion Barb could operate in up to 2.9 meters of water. The Centurion Barb saw extensive service in the Falklands War in 1982, when the landing at San Carlos was done under fire, and so this was critical for getting the vehicles and the equipment and the men there as quickly as possible. And it was continued to be used clear up until 2003 in the Gulf War, but in 2003 the Centurion Barb was replaced with a vehicle that's based on the Leopard 1. You know, this is truly a unique vehicle. Without these service vehicles, which people don't really think of when they think about tanks, but without these you wouldn't be able to get the battle tanks where they need to be. And the fact that this unique vehicle is preserved here at Bovington shows how amazing this museum is, and that's why the Centurion Barb is my number 5 tank. If you've ever been to the Tank Museum's Vehicle Conservation Center, you might have wondered, what's that weird tank that has a grass skirt? Well, that's my number 4 tank on the list. This is the Chieftain Signature Integration Demonstrator, or SID, based on a Chieftain Mark 12, and it's an early attempt at a stealth tank. Now, it's interesting because when you think of stealth for a ground vehicle, what you try to mask is either sound or heat signature, but there's some parts of the SID that are built to mask the radar signature. So, for example, look how squared off it is, and some of this is actually made out of wood. It looks almost more like a Challenger 2 than it looks like a Chieftain. And the paint you have to be careful with because it's radar absorbent paint, and that can be quite caustic, and you want to breathe this stuff in. Radar absorbent paint is pretty cool stuff. It essentially has shapes built in that resonate with the radar signal, dissipating the waves as heat so that fewer will bounce back to the radar. Radar absorbing paint was around as early as the Second World War, where the paint was applied to German U-boats. But again, the stealth of ground vehicles is not usually about radar signature, so it isn't exactly clear how this experimental tank was used. Then there are the brushed dust flaps and the blanked road wheels, which were probably to mask dust, but also been to square off the shape to mask the radar signature as well. There's still a lot we don't know about the SID. We don't really know what lessons the British Army derived from the SID, but some of the things that they used on the SID were incorporated into the Challenger 2, and the fact that we don't know the whole story tells us that probably there was some other stuff discovered that the British Army still doesn't want you to know. Part of this is a bit of forgotten history. But the SID is important not just because it's an interesting test bed and it made contribution to modern tank designs, but because this is an absolutely unique test vehicle, and that shows how extraordinary the collection here is at the Tank Museum at Bovington, because otherwise this tank would just be forgotten history. So my number 3 tank is a proper tank, the Matilda.
How many tanks? Against how many tanks? Wow. No, just imagine being there. Or trying to give orders. Yeah, we're trying to get orders, right. I mean, it is really hard to actually just imagine it, you know? Huh? Well, yeah, it is worth trying. Yeah, you're right about that. All right, bye. July 16th, 1943. In 1940 and 1941, the Allies were kicked off the European continent 3 times, in France, Norway, and Greece. Since then, though, they've added the US and the USSR to their roster and have secured the African continent. And now, this week, the fight to take back Western Europe begins with the invasion of Sicily.
Before we start the show, here's a word from our sponsors.
Smash the tyrants. Fight for democracy. Join the Time Ghost Army.
I'm Indy Nidell. This is World War II. Last week, the Germans launched their huge summer offensive, Operation Citadel, a gigantic pincer attack against the cursed salient in the USSR. The Allies continued their offensive in the Central Solomons, and they were gearing up for a new one this week in the Mediterranean. A very important word here. We had an extra regular weekly episode that came out the other day on the 12th. You should maybe watch that before you watch this, because it dives deeper into events than I can here, specifically those in the USSR. Anyhow, on the 10th, that new Allied offensive, Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily, begins. Dwight Eisenhower is the supreme commander, and Harold Alexander, his deputy, is in charge of the 15th Army Group. This is made up of George Patton's 7th Army and Bernard Montgomery's 8th Army. Naval top dog is Andrew Cunningham, and Bertram Ramsay and Harry Hewitt run the British and American landings, respectively. Arthur Tedder commands the 3,700 Allied planes ready for direct support. The attack begins already the night of the 9th, just past midnight, with airborne landings. There are serious problems with these, many caused by weather and inexperience, which lead to some tragic results. The Americans, who make 2 landings, are largely the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment from the 82nd Airborne Division, with a bunch of smaller units attached. And this is their first combat drop. They're supposed to be dropped northeast of Yela to prevent Axis reserves from getting to the Allied beachheads. But winds up to 70 kilometers an hour blow many gliders off course, and they end up scattered all over the southeastern corner of Sicily. Things don't go much better for the British, and actually, only 12 of 147 total gliders land on target. And it isn't just bad weather and inexperience. The tow planes take AA fire and perform evasive action, which causes confusion, which causes a lot of the gliders to be released too early, and 65 of them crash into the sea, drowning well over 200 men. Some others are shot down or don't release at all and head back to Tunisia. As the night rolls on, the boats arrive for the landings. 7th Army lands between Licata and Scoglitti. They face light opposition, but the British and Canadian landings between Syracuse and the southern tip of the island are unopposed. The Axis figure no one would do big landings in such bad weather. But LSTs and LCTs manage, with hiccups, to put armor ashore with the infantry. There is some fairly strong resistance from Italian coastal units in the towns, but Licata, Yela, and Vittori, and even Syracuse, fall by the end of the first day, and 7 Allied assault divisions are ashore. Fears of heavy Axis air power prove unfounded, though they do sink a few ships, the 10th and the 11th. The British take Palazzolo the 11th, but the Americans are far more seriously attacked, and elements of the Hermann Goering Panzer Division arrive to fight them. The Americans have not managed to land so much armor or so many anti-tank guns, but naval guns help them out this day. The 12th, the Panzers and Italian infantry make unsuccessful attacks on the Americans and then withdraw to go and fight the British, whose advance is more serious. They capture Lentini and advance on Augusta, taking it the 13th. They try to reach Catania, and to do so, try to take 2 important bridges with paratroops and commandos, but only manage 1. By the 14th, the main Allied forces are advancing pretty uniformly, taking Nishimi and Vizzini. On the 15th, Omar Bradley's 2nd Corps starts driving north, and George Patton puts together a corps to attack westward. In the east, the Axis fall back behind the Simeto River. I'll talk more about all this next week, because there are issues and controversies with the joint operations. Today, in the field, the Americans attack Agrigento, the Canadians take Caltagirone, and some British units manage to cross the Simeto and soon get armored reinforcements. Today, off the field, Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt issue a statement calling for an Italian surrender and suggest the removal of Benito Mussolini as Italian leader. Some fascist politicians in Italy are actually already starting to plot this without prodding. So the week ends in Sicily, and the Allied forces, at long last, have a foothold in Europe outside of Britain and the USSR. The Allies have a foothold in the Solomon Islands as well, though, by now, and this month they've been trying to extend it. On the 12th, the Japanese try bringing more men to Kolombangara. Coast watchers notice this, and it gives Allied Naval Commander Bull Halsey time to order Walden Ainsworth to head north and intercept them. He has now 3 light cruisers and 10 destroyers. The destroyers are in 2 sections of 5. The second section have never operated either under Ainsworth or with each other. They do outnumber the Japanese, though. Their covering force is the light cruiser Jinsu under Shunji Isaki and 5 destroyers. 4 destroyer transports carry 1,200 men. The battle that follows is sort of a repeat of last week's action. The night of July 12th, the Americans get visual contact of the Japanese by 12:50 a.m. from a lead destroyer. Isaki sends the 4 transports back to Vila and makes visual contact at 1:08. The Japanese launch 29 torpedoes in the next 6 minutes. The American destroyers in the van also launched torpedoes. Ninth now reloaded their torpedoes and is heading southeast to engage the enemy once again. Light cruiser Honolulu's radar picks them up at 1:56. By this time, the Americans aren't really sure where all of their own forces are, so they don't know if radar is picking up their own ships or Japanese ones. By the time they figure it out, the Japanese have launched 31 more torpedoes. Cruiser St. Louis has her bow blown off. Honolulu takes a forward hit, and destroyer Gwin is hit amidships. In all, the Japanese complete their transport mission with Jinsu sunk, 482 dead, and no other ship damaged. They claim that they sank all 3 Allied cruisers, but none of them are in fact sunk, though they will be out of action for months. Gwin does sink, and 61 men die. Again, a superior cruiser and destroyer force has been well handled by the Japanese. After Kolombangara, Nimitz and Halsey realized that using cruisers to chase Japanese destroyers in the restricted waters of the Solomons was not working. From now on, U.S. Navy destroyers would carry the burden alone against the Japanese Navy's destroyers, reinforcing the various Japanese garrisons. The American 2 Regiment attack towards Munda Airfield that began at the end of last week continues. On the 10th, they have small success, but have yet to reach the main Japanese force. On the 11th, they decide that the 169th Regiment will continue as is, but the 172nd will head south towards Liana and try to reach Munda from there. They won't get there through the swamps until the 13th, but they are then reinforced. By the 15th, both of the regiments have made contact with the main Japanese defense lines, but disease is just rampant. Well, Halsey makes Oscar Griswold commander of the new Georgia Occupation Force. He takes over but it will be a few days before the rear areas of the 43rd. But there are far bigger advance attempts, with far bigger flanks exposed over in the Soviet Union as the Germans continue the Battle of Kursk. Well, in the north by the 10th, Walter Model's offensive has ground to a halt. But in the south, the advancing German armored spearheads all had exposed flanks that were vulnerable to counterattacks. Soviet mines and anti-tank guns had succeeded in disabling hundreds of German tanks and assault guns. At this point, Zhukov's strategy was working. The German assault groups were being worn down by attrition, and von Manstein could not sustain this effort for long. Of course, he's still going to try. He's thinned out quiet sectors of his front to sustain flanks of the Panzer Corps to ever more weaken its northern thrust. They've ordered Pavel Rotmistrov's 5th Guards Tank Army to the Prokhorovka region to the east. They're far from the only reinforcements heading to the area, and the Oboyan Road itself was seriously beefed up at the end of last week. Now, on the 9th, the Soviets did stop the German drive up the Oboyan Road, despite the Germans throwing everything they had into the fray and support by 1,500 Luftwaffe sorties. Not only that, but the Soviets had tied down the forces on the German left flank to the point that they could no longer help in the drive on Kursk. After that, to Vatutin, the important thing is to contain Werner Kemp's battle group and 3rd Panzer Corps on the German right. With his forces stopped on the Oboyan Road, 4th Panzer Army Commander Hermann Hoth issued new orders to shift the axis of its advance northeastward towards Prokhorovka. Hoth was convinced that the still powerful SS Corps, with concentrated air support, could smash the armored threat to its east, unlock the advance of the 3rd Panzer Corps, and open a new, albeit longer, approach route to Kursk. Perhaps then, Model could finally break out of his confines along the northern flank of the Kursk Bulge. And it makes sense to German command that grouping the main strength of the 4th Panzer Army in a 7 or 8 kilometer sector would do the job. And with Kempf attacking northwards as well, job done, right? On the 10th and the 11th, the Germans regroup. On the 10th, they launch some attacks towards Oboyan, though the Soviets know they are about to aim for Prokhorovka. Vatutin reports this to Stalin that night. To mount this new attack, German units would have to be taken from the flank to feed the assault, which gave the Voronezh command opportunity to prepare an attack to encircle German forces operating against Oboyan and Prokhorovka. Rotmistrov's tank army gets 2 more tank corps to face the coming assault, bringing the total number to 850 tanks, 500 in the first echelon, although a great many of these are light tanks and only 35 heavy ones or self-propelled guns. And on the 11th, the enemy assault comes. It comes everywhere. Group Kempf from the south for Prokhorovka at dawn, the Oboyan Road attack at 9 a.m., and at 9:30 the main attack, the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, also towards Prokhorovka. It's a windy, rainy day, and there are jabs and more jabs all afternoon. But by the end of the day, the 3 attacks have actually boxed in most of the armies that Vatutin has been planning to use for the counterattack. So on the 12th, it is Rotmistrov's 5th Guards Army that is the main actor in the operation. The night was a very tense one in the Prokhorovka area. Few men slept. The day broke with overcast skies and intermittent scudding rain. The battle itself was a comparatively narrow sector, bounded on one side by the river Psel, on the other by the railway cutting. Ahead of Prokhorovka itself lay the steppe, dotted with small, cultivated plots and gardens. In the cornland roundabout, Soviet anti-tank batteries and tank units lay hidden in their camouflage. Again, watch the extra episode from a few days ago. Anyhow, the planned Soviet attack is rushed to go off 2 hours earlier than scheduled, but the 6th and 7th Panzer Divisions have already attacked northwards like 10 kilometers from the 2nd SS Panzer Corps. So now you have an enormous, chaotic, swirling tank battle of epic magnitude with well over 1,000 tanks in action at once, though no more than maybe.
It's midnight. I think I'm gonna go away now. So, thank you very much for listening. For the day, and I'll be back probably within, if not tonight, then probably by like 6 p.m. tomorrow or today, the 17th of July. So take care and have a good rest of your night and good morning and goodbye.